And with us is Corey Heaven, who's the General Manager. Good, Corey, thank you for being with us. We've got 10 minutes on the clock today, so I'll hand over to you to present your submission.
Tani whetu ki te rangi, ko Rangitane ki te whenua, tēnā koutou ngā mema o te komiti parimata, ko Corey Heaven tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no Rangitane o Wairau. I'm here today on behalf of Rangitane o Wairau to oppose the Treaty Principles Bill in its entirety. I'm joined by the co-chair of our Rangitane o Wairau Settlement Trust, Janice Rafiri. We're grateful for the opportunity to present orally to the Select Committee, especially given that there will be thousands who will not have that opportunity despite asking for it. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge you, Mr. Chair, and your recent appointment as Minister for Te Waipounamu. You have already outlined a strong focus on advocating for Te Waipounamu and driving economic outcomes for the mainland. Rangitane is one of the 90 of Te Waipounamu looks forward to supporting you and seeing you succeed in your role. When whānau Māori and Te Waipounamu thrive, all of Te Waipounamu thrives, and when Te Waipounamu thrives, Aotearoa thrives. Also want to acknowledge our local MPs, Takuta, Rachel and Jamie, tēnā koutou. But to the matter before us, the Treaty Principles Bill, let me state our position very clearly. We oppose this bill. This bill is a step backwards for Aotearoa. It undermines decades of progress and threatens the very foundation of our nation's identity and constitutional framework. Te Tiriti o Waitangi is a living covenant between tangata whenua and the Crown, promised to work together for the benefit of all people in Aotearoa. For decades, iwi like Rangitane have worked tirelessly to uphold that promise and to rebuild what was lost through raupatu, treaty breaches and dishonourable Crown practices. Our 2014 settlement was a significant milestone for us, but it was not the conclusion of our journey. Settlements are not the full expression of Māori rights. They are simply a step towards restoring some balance. Through our settlement, the Crown committed to re-establishing a relationship with us. To quote, be one that was based on mutual trust, cooperation and respect for the Treaty of Waitangi and its principles. Yet here we are, addressing a government bill that seeks to redefine those very principles. This bill violates Article 2 of Te Tiriti, which guarantees tino rangatiratanga over our lands, taonga and resources. And the attempt to restrict treaty principles merely to historical settlements disregards the spirit and intent of Te Tiriti. It is an affront to Mai Tupuna Ihaya Kaikoura, who signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi at Horahura Kākahu in the Port Underwood on 17th of June 1840. The exclusion of tangata whenua from meaningful consultation during the drafting of this bill is, frankly, an egregious breach of good faith on part of the Crown. How can a bill that profoundly impacts Māori be introduced without the input of those who it most affects? This legislation has been made about us, but without us. Where is the mutual trust and cooperation in that? Te Tiriti o Waitangi is Aotearoa's foundational document. Its principles are woven into legislation, and they serve as a cornerstone of our constitutional framework. Attempting to narrow and redefine those principles undermines that foundation, leaving it cracked and unstable. By removing the judiciary's ability to interpret treaty principles, this bill attempts to consolidate power within Parliament and the Executive, and it weakens the checks and balances that have upheld the Crown-Māori relationship for decades. If passed, this bill will have profound and long-lasting consequences for Māori. It perpetuates inequity, it undermines trust, and it risks further alienation of tangata whenua on the whenua. As the Waitangi Tribunal has stated, this bill represents one of the most significant breaches of Te Tiriti in modern history. Rangitane urges this committee to recommend the withdrawal of this bill in its entirety. We are not opposed to a meaningful kōrero about the place and the role of Te Tiriti in Aotearoa's future, but this is not that process. Te Tiriti is a document, yes, but it is more than that. It is a promise and a commitment to work together, and it is one that has been reaffirmed through decades of legal precedents, grassroots advocacy and Crown-Māori partnership. So to this government and to this committee, Rangitane asks you this. History will judge you. Will you be remembered as those who honoured the promise of Te Tiriti or as those who tore it apart? And with those remarks, I'll leave the remaining time available for any questions that you may have.
Kia ora, Corey. It's very good to see you before the committee again. You've got two of your local MPs that would like to ask you a question, and rather than have a scrap, we'll go to the first in time and ask Rachel Boyack to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora, Corey and Janice, lovely to see you here today. My question is around your Settlement Act from 2014, I believe it was. You mentioned in your kōrero that the agreement actually references the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. So I'm really interested in your views on how this bill, if it were to proceed, would potentially undermine your settlement. Maybe some practical examples of how that would undermine things or potentially be in conflict with your settlement because it specifically references the principles. So if those principles get amended, what's going to be the impact for your settlement and how it plays out going forward?
Yeah, that's right. So the deed of settlement we signed with the Crown in December 2010 included the apology from the Crown. And that apology is lengthy and it was hard earned to get that settlement, but also to get that apology from the Crown. What I would say is that it does mention principles, but more particularly it references respect and mutual trust, cooperation. This bill is about more than just undermining the principles, but it undermines Te Tiriti itself, it undermines the relationship, it undermines the value of that settlement because it directly goes against what we have entered into in good faith. What I would say in terms of the second part of your question, some practical examples of where this might come into play, is simple processes like working on legislation like this, having the opportunity to kōrero, to have mutual trust and respect with one another, with those who represent the Crown at the time. Yeah.
Good, Corey. Thank you. Takuta first.
Kei aku whanaunga tēnā pōrua Janice, tēnā rawa atu ki a koe Corey, pōrua tahi. My question is more around the ohanga. And to the chair, Mr. Miga, welcome to looking after the whole of Te Waipounamu e hoa. Look, like it or not, Tiwi Māori throughout Te Waipounamu are a significant player today in its economy and one of the biggest and fastest growing into the future. It doesn't matter where you stand politically or whatever, that's the reality. And iwi have been very patient and gracious in dealing with the Crown over the last 10 to 15 years as they move through settlements, but they now have in their hands significant resources, significant cash assets, and it's really dependent on a good relationship with the Tiriti partner and its government. So my question for you is, how does this current action and direction of this government, given they have such a firm focus, a laser focus, ruthless focus on getting the economy back on track, how does that make you feel working with them into the future?
Tēnā koe te whananga, ngā mihi. So what I would say, firstly, around the economic value of the settlement, I fondly remember working closely with Mark Solomon through our asset holding company several years ago. And Mark spoke of the value of treaty settlements relative to the loss that had been quantified. So we're talking about a 1% settlement value against what was lost. Anyway, we're moving forward and we are working hard now to re-establish ourselves, and that has provided us with that basis to do that. How does it make us feel in terms of working with the Crown? Well, in many respects, the treaty forces us to work with the Crown. That is the nature of the relationship that we are in, and Rangitane will work with whoever it needs to work with at the time. But we will also stand on our own 2 feet. We will be providing opportunities for our people, and we'll be using the settlement base that we have to start with for now to build a better future for them, and certainly one that is better than the likes of my grandparents and those before them inherited.
Oh, kia ora, Corey. There's not time to squeeze one quick question.
A very quick question, which we just need a quick answer, which is the previous submitter noted their views around equal rights. One of the things we know in Aotearoa is that Māori have significantly lower life expectancy of around 7 years for both male and female. In your view, does that represent equality?
Absolutely not, and that's just the start. You could go to poorer cancer outcomes, hospitalisations at higher rates, especially for respiratory diseases, higher rates of homelessness, higher rates of unemployment. Where to start?
Kia ora, Corey. Thank you. Thanks for being with us today and for spending the time here this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Radio.
Sounds like a much more positive submission.
Yeah, I mean, Rangitane is one of my local iwi. So, yeah, I mean, the Treaty Principles Bill, Helmut brought up a really interesting point that the principles are a compromise rather than being a direct interpretation of Te Tiriti. And we currently have a coalition in power that wants to undermine that compromise. And that includes, you know, the obligations that the Crown has towards iwi, like Rangitane and Taranaki, as we saw before, and Ngāti Toa. So, yes, and this idea that democracies cannot coexist between sovereignties is false. We have contemporary examples, with the EU, and we have historical examples of this.
Yeah.
I find the arguments against I find the argument for this bill, to be just lacking in logic.
Ooh, sorry. This is what happens when you've done a paper run. It's was it 4 a.m. this morning? Again.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, News Guide, the Order Paper Podcast. YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok.